So the other day, I and a bunch of cartoon fans heard the news that Steven Universe is coming back with a brand new spin-off series. Now, I haven't watched most of the original series, so I cannot say I'm excited for it, but I am happy for fans who have watched and enjoyed the original series, and are now looking forward to its return. Just a couple weeks before that, we heard news that The Amazing World of Gumball is also making a return for a 7th season. As someone who watched the first season of the show when it came out, and just recently caught up with it, I'm definitely very excited to see the show come back on July 28th. The same can be said about regular show, which I have also watched in full and really enjoyed. And then there's Adventure Time, which never really went away, to be honest. Yeah, the original series ended, but we did get Distant Lands, and now Fiona and Cake, which is about to air its 2nd season soon. As many people have pointed out, Cartoon Network's Big 4 cartoons are back. Ironically not on Cartoon Network though, because that channel is basically dead here in the US. While this is great news for fans of these shows, I can't help but acknowledge just how many of these 2010 cartoons are either making a comeback or are still very relevant. In my last video, I covered how Phineas and Ferb made a comeback a decade after it ended. Big City Greens, which first aired on Disney Channel in 2018, is still airing new episodes. Rick and Morty first premiered in 2013 on Adult Swim, and it's now airing its 8th season. Meanwhile, cartoons that premiered in this decade, like The Owl House, Molly McGee, Moon Girl, Hamster and Gretel, Close Enough, Infinity Train, and a bunch of other shows, have all ended most of the time due to executives canceling them. There's only a few shows from this decade that are still getting new episodes, and most of the popular ones, as far as I know, are created by indie animation creators. So why are the 2010 cartoons making a comeback and staying relevant today, while most of the cartoons from this decade are struggling to keep going? Well, we can first point to the obvious scapegoat, which is the fact that companies don't care about original content, and they want to make sequels and spin-offs because they know they can make a quick buck on them. We've hammered that talking point to the ground already in previous videos, and I hope I don't need to repeat that. We get it, companies like to farm on people's nostalgia. However, media companies have always farmed on nostalgia when you think about it. The sequel and spin-off craze aren't just exclusive to this decade. Last decade also had its fair share of sequels and spin-off shows and movies. I mean, the most recognizable kids cartoon today and the 2010s is a show that's older than me, for God's sake. Also, Cartoon Network's longest running show right now is a reboot from 2013. So seeing reboots and continuations of shows from the last decade are actually expected, and in some cases warranted. For example, Gumball Season 6 ended on an unresolved cliffhanger in 2019, and the movie that was supposed to resolve that went nowhere. So in this case, a Season 7 needed to happen. Also, there are cases where the creators simply do want to continue the shows for as long as possible, especially in this era where job security is something that we should not take for granted. So the notion of companies giving us sequels and spin-offs of established IPs aren't really an issue or an anomaly. However, they start appearing to be issues when you also see a decline in original content, and this is resulting in the sequels and remakes taking the attention of the general public and fans alike, and it's leading to some sort of a feedback loop. But why is this phenomenon more apparent now than in previous decades? In short, streaming. You see, the 2020s is the first decade ever where streaming platforms like Netflix, Disney+, Amazon, or even YouTube are the primary ways people find and consume content. They existed for sure in the 2010s and even in the 2000s, but they were not like what they are today, and they were not the main places where people discovered and consumed new shows. The main ways to watch shows are through cable TV, which doesn't depend on an algorithm to cater content to what it thinks you want to see. Also, back in cable TV days, people would turn on the TV and just watch what was available for them at the time. So in a way, you are actually more likely to experience and enjoy a wider variety of content. In addition, many shows that you are looking forward to usually air new episodes once a week during a season, and when they do air, it's usually a very big event for the fan base of those shows. This resulted in fandoms elevating themselves to more people, attracting new viewers, making the show more popular, and the cycle continues. This was especially the case in the 2010s compared to previous decades, because this decade was when social media like Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, and so on took off as the primary platforms where fans of these shows can interact with each other. Combine that with the rise of smartphones, virtually anyone from anywhere that has a phone and an internet connection can watch and talk about these shows and be part of a growing fan base. The 2010s really was that narrow window where new shows had that ideal format of airing new content in a specific time for everyone to get hyped like it's a sport. And they got social media to spread the word of that new show easier and faster than ever before. So it's not much of a surprise that cartoons from this decade continue to remain relevant in current times. Compare that to the 2020s, and most shows from this era simply do not have these conditions. In the era of streaming, each service has an algorithm designed to cater to an individual's content preferences. In theory, this is a good thing to have, and it is when the goal of a streaming service is to maximize the time a person spends on watching content on the platform. However, this algorithm can also prevent certain shows from being recommended to very broad demographics, which is the opposite of how cable TV works. Also, in the era of streaming, new episode premieres are not really that big of an event nowadays because they don't premiere live like what it used to be, and that hype factor is not as strong as it once was. Of course, the upside with this format is people can watch the new episode whenever they like, but that benefit for viewers surprisingly takes a major toll for the people creating the shows in a few key ways. For one, creators of shows inherently earn less money from streaming compared to cable TV, and in theaters by the way, in the case of movies, which is partly why the writer's strike occurred a couple years back. But more significantly, in streaming, viewers are more likely to binge their content. What that means is that streaming companies now have the desire to release new episodes of shows in large batches, and keep the watch time numbers up as much as possible. Now, if the content was made to be binged, then that does not really matter whether or not the show is released all at once or on a weekly basis. But like we mentioned before, TV content is not made to be binged. Releasing a bunch of episodes all at once incentivizes people to binge watch certain shows in order to prevent getting spoilers. This in turn would mean less time for a show building an audience more organically, which means a smaller audience and a smaller fan base that can hype up the show and freely advertise the show to more people. In addition, having episodes released in a bomb format just increases the length of hiatuses between seasons, which could also hurt certain shows. Now, this isn't much of an issue with shows that have already established their presence like Cartoon Network's Big Four. When new batches of episodes are launched to streaming, it's almost certainly going to get lots of viewers who binge the new episodes, giving the streaming platforms the watch time needed to justify keeping the show going. Also, knowing that they are relatively safe investments, studios will likely divert more resources into those shows to produce content faster to keep up with demand. But newer shows don't have the luxury because it needs time to develop its audience, which is not possible with a binge-watching bomb release format. With all this in mind, yeah, it's not surprising to see studios prioritize producing older, proven cartoons that have a solid following. It's rather unfortunate as someone who likes to see more original content, but at the same time, I would be lying if I say I'm not looking forward to seeing these shows come back. You guys know I'm loving the new Phineas and Ferb remake for the reasons I mentioned in my last video. Despite the decade-long break, the show is just as entertaining as ever and has potential for more stories to tell. With Gumball, after finishing the first 6 seasons, I am especially craving to see what is next for the people in Elmore, especially since, unlike the earlier seasons, continuity seems to matter much more than ever for Season 7. As for a regular show, according to recent reports, that show is also getting some changes to appeal to older demographics, considering that it will air in Adult Swim in some markets. Now, regular show has always been a cartoon that appealed to older viewers with its humor and other elements, but most of that humor is shown through S&P approved gags, because it had to appeal to 11-year-olds at the time like me. With most of its original fans having grown up though, the creators are now unchained and can now show whatever they like, which is very exciting. You'll basically get regular show with close enough humor. Like I mentioned before, I have not watched most of Adventure Time or Steven Universe, so I cannot say much about those revivals, but again, I'm happy for the fans of these shows, and I definitely have a much bigger incentive to watch them in full now because I do not want to develop FOMO. But if you are someone who does not care about these shows making a comeback and you are still disappointed in the treatment of more recent shows, consider this. While most cartoons from this decade failed to have a long runtime with a fully fleshed out story, many of them still have large followings. The Owl House being the most notable example, of course, but even Molly McGee, Moon Girl, and others also had good, decent sized followings. Hopefully in time, when Disney, Warner Bros. And so on have to appeal to the next generation of viewers, they will bring back these shows and give them a proper run this time. We are definitely in a period where the economics of the situation prevent new shows from being successful unless if it's from an indie company like Glitch, but this situation cannot last forever. Eventually, the industry will get better in one way or another, and in time, we will have something more to enjoy than just reheated leftovers from the last decade. Now, that is speculation on my part, and my thoughts are not the only ones that matter. If you guys have anything to say about the resurgence of 2010 cartoons, let me know about your thoughts down in the comments below, and please give this video a like, and subscribe for more content like this. With all that said, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day. See you in the next one.